I watched Scream 7 this weekend, and I have thoughts. The first part of this will be spoiler-free, but later on I will be getting into specifics. I'll make sure to give a heads up before getting into that, though. Since this is the 7th movie in the series, I'll quickly talk about my thoughts on the rest of Scream. I don't dislike any of the entries in this series. I enjoy watching all of them. If I had to pick a least favorite, I would probably go with 3. And if I had to pick a favorite, it would be between the original and Scream 6. But again, I enjoy all of them. I even watched the Scream TV series. Despite the fact that the first 2 seasons have nothing to actually do with Scream, I really enjoy them. Not a super big fan of Season 3 ditching the storyline of the previous seasons, but hey, we actually have Ghostface in that season. Definitely my least favorite season. I am writing this about 2 hours after getting out of the theater, so these are very fresh and recent thoughts. For the most part, I really enjoyed this movie. It was amazing to have Sidney back, Neve Campbell's performance was great, and the relationship with Tatum I thought was really well done. I'll get into more specifics later in the spoiler portion, but I think the rule or theme in this one worked really well for the most part. It was nice to get out of the sort of requel thing that the last couple movies have played around with. The jump scares and action sequences for the most part were some of my favorite in the entire series. It was scary and had my heart racing, but it didn't feel quite as violent as Scream 6, which I think is a good thing. I was constantly on the edge of my seat. I think this movie's opening sequence is also one of my favorite in the entire series. I just really dig how they pulled it off. I've said this in regards to a few things at this point, that being that I enjoyed this movie for the most part. There's one pretty big thing that I was kinda let down by. I'll get into more specifics later, but for me, I just didn't really get the motivations of the Ghostface killer or killers this time around. I'll get into more of the why in the spoiler portion. There's one more thing I wanted to bring up before getting into spoiler territory, that being the song Twisting the Knife by Ice Nine Kills featuring McKenna Grace. It is absolutely fire. I have listened to it so many times in the past week or two that I've lost count. Definitely give it a listen. I've been jamming to it the entire time I was writing this video. Okay, this is the final warning. Spoilers for Scream 7 beyond this point. Alright. As I've said, for the most part, I really enjoyed this movie. I think it did a lot of things right. The kills were shocking and brutal, but mostly didn't feel over the top. Really, the only one that I think could have been toned down a little bit was the guy getting impaled in such a way at the bar or tavern that beer started pouring out of his mouth. Just felt a little much. All of the Ghostface chases and action sequences in this movie really worked for me. The scene in the wall was great. Being chased out of the bar, through the street, into the coffee place was great. The switch out with the robotic statue in the opening scene was good. This movie constantly had me on the edge of my seat. As I mentioned earlier, this movie seems to ditch the requel theme, as it is briefly mentioned during the movie's traditional suspect breakdown scene. This time around, we're dealing with sort of a sense of nostalgia, both for the characters but also for us as the viewers. By means of AI and movie magic, we get appearances from characters long dead, like Stu, Miss Loomis, Roman, and Dewey. Obviously, this was meant to screw with the legacy characters like Sidney and Gale, but from an audience perspective, it was really cool seeing these characters again. And for me at least, it was done in a way that doesn't ruin or mess with their legacy in prior films. And I think this was also a really fun way to play with the long-running theory that some believe Stu survived the events of the first movie. As for this movie's weak spot, which is unfortunately a pretty big deal, so I can understand why it might turn some people off. The reveals and motives for the Ghostface killers. As of writing this, I finished the movie less than 3 hours ago, and I legitimately can't remember what the motives even were in order to talk about them. As for the reveals and who did it this time around, I picked out the doctor or whatever he was pretty much right away. The fact that he didn't know who Stu was when Sidney and Gale showed him the photo, very odd. But I almost started doubting myself because the guy had like one scene before the big reveal. And the neighbor lady, I would have never guessed her in a million years. She had like 2 scenes the entire movie. Looking back, she was pretty quick to defend her son from Gale's questioning, but I guess that didn't really register for me because she is his mom, so it would make sense. And I guess technically there was a third with Carl for like the first 20 or 30 minutes of the movie. But again, the dude had one scene before he got unmasked. Just was an interesting decision to have the culprits in this movie have a combined total of like 4 appearances prior to the reveals. To wrap things up, I can understand why the big reveal could turn people off of the movie, but for me, Scream 7 does a lot of stuff really well that ultimately outweighs the negatives. While it is not without flaws, I still really enjoyed Scream 7, and I cannot wait for Scream 8.